Hi everybody and welcome to CERIAS Security Seminar here at Purdue University. Our speaker today is Ed Lopez from Fortinet. He's a VP of Technology with Fortinet, and today he's going to talk about the inertia of productivity, an evolving view of network-based security.
Thank you so much. Afternoon, how's it going? As mentioned, I'm Ed Lopez, Vice President of Technology for Fortinet. Fortinet has been around, just a quick background, has been around since 2001. I've been with the company a little over 6 years. Currently a publicly traded company, one of the largest in the firewall market space and unified threat management. Currently about $500 million revenue, so we kind of have a little bit of fun. But today I'm not here to talk about the specifics. This is actually kind of a high-level talk, and I apologize if it's not as technical as you want to talk, as we may want to talk about. But it really talks about security decisions and how, and I call it the inertia of productivity and how the inertia of productivity impacts on security decisions. Let's start with a couple of opening thoughts. First one from Bruce Schneier. Okay, he's a security technologist. If you think technology can solve your security problems, then you don't understand the problems and you don't understand the technology. It's an interesting quote because he points out that one of the mistakes that the market makes continuously is to believe that security is like a walled fortress. It's something that's fixed. It's something that you buy every 5 years and you not worry about it. The other one is an old one from Cicero. There is no castle so strong that it can't be overthrown by money. I'm going to put a little bit of a spin on this one. It really is, if you think about it, the value incorporated in our data systems today is such that they make for very interesting targets. One of the things that we have to be concerned about is the reliance, the productivity we derive from our systems, and its value relative to both internal and external attackers. So there are a number of security issues. If I was going to look into crystal ball or into the old TV screen here, a number of interesting security issues that you're going to be facing as you come into the workforce. One of the big ones, and it's a large buzzword now in the industry, is BYOD, bring your own device, or the commercialization of IT. The concept, and we'll talk a lot more about each of these, but the concept that we're starting to be governed a lot by endpoint issues because we no longer own or control the endpoints, and that is adding to a lot of information assurance issues. We do have wireless and mobility. Okay, wireless and mobility and security go hand in hand because virtually 100% of the new items coming onto the marketplace are wireless. Okay, so if you don't think there isn't a direct association with wireless and security, you're mistaken. We have to consider wireless as, quite honestly, one of the new battlegrounds in terms of information assurance. Malicious insiders. We have to consider the fact that whether or not they're innocent but they're botted, or whether we have issues with malicious insiders, the traditional security of just dealing with IP endpoints is going to change. We'll talk a lot about that. Botnets, distributed denial of service, how we still defend from these threats is going to be, of course, of growing concern. Social networking, okay, it's something, hey, we all live in the time of Facebook. But the thing here is now you're starting to see corporations with concerns about reputations in social networking and how to defend them. And that's going to be an interesting concern. Government industry censorship. It's something that is growing. It's real. We'll talk. We'll move away from the morality of it, and we'll talk about the reality of what we have to deal with. The IPv6 crossover, and I'm going to be a person who kind of puts a flag out there and say that IPv6 crossover is closer than we think. It's actually going to probably be fairly large, even in the U.S., probably within 2015, 2016. And it's something that we have to be prepared for. Industrial security, it is a huge, huge area that requires a great deal of expertise because there are a lot of old industrial systems, closed systems, which are now starting to make their way into IP. Even if they're closed, they're into IP. We'll talk a little bit about the concerns on industrial security. And then I'll finish up with, just some tips with regard to the inertia of productivity. So let's start with BYOD. Okay, BYOD. Okay, we expect to deal with bring your own device issues, right? We all have laptops. Many of you have tablets, I see there. Smartphones, they're going to be productivity devices, and even devices of the future, such as Project Glass from Google. We have to be able to recognize that these are devices. They all have IP addresses. They are all going to be on our network, and we have to associate, we'd be concerned about security policy associated with them. There are some that you may have thought about. Certainly web-connected media, video game systems, specialty application devices. The one in red there is actually a specialty Android device that's for cooks and chefs. And I asked the developer, I said, well, what are your security concerns associated with this? How is this secure? And the only answer I could really get was SSL. And it's like, well, okay, that's great. We have to be concerned about concerns about specialty devices. The one on the right there is actually, if you don't recognize it, it's Raspberry Pi. It's the little $25, $35 unit that's now being sent out to third world schools and such to get people interested in computer science and development, the idea of specialty devices entering networks. And then out of left field, we have a bunch of other devices as well, appliances. The one on the left is a refrigerator, a smart meter, health and fitness. The one on the right is actually a Wi-Fi enabled scale. I don't know why I would want a Wi-Fi enabled scale, but they exist. Web connected toys. I was actually having discussions with Disney about concerns about web-connected toys. Considered the idea of putting a web-connected toy in a crib with a 6-month-old and it's listening to vocalizations. And then, in the cloud, it's trying to provide content which helps, entertains the child and helps it along. But imagine if that was hacked and your kid starts learning how to curse. I mean, it becomes an issue, right? From an information security standpoint. The one on the right, I have I put the question marks on. Ollie, this was something I saw at CES. The web-connected smelly robot. Supposedly you fill it with fragrance and you connect it up and it's tied to your Facebook account, and when someone posts something, it releases a scent in the air. I don't know what the purpose of this is, but the thing here is these are all nodes showing up on the network. So BYODs, they're personal assets, not selected by their security criteria. Okay, they will simultaneously run business and personal applications. They will be processing and storing business-sensitive data. They will almost always be wireless or cellular in communication. They will, in many cases, be shared devices. I know a number of times my son's like, "Hey, can I borrow your iPhone 4S or whatever?" Yeah, these are they're shared devices. They will have no effective access controls, at least not in a traditional or corporate sense. They will have application, OS, IP, vulnerabilities, just like every other device out there. They will have the ability to access your network. They will get stolen. And they will appear on the network regardless of your efforts. So this is something we have to recognize. It is a growing trend. It is something that's not going to be stopped because of the consumerization or the commercialization of IT. We go to the store, we buy the IT devices we choose to work with, and that's and now it becomes a nightmare for IT administrators. How do we deal with it? Well, the way we all deal with it is denial. right? Hey, they're on the network. People are being productive. This is part of, as I said, the inertia of productivity. We don't put, people don't want to put security into place where people are being productive. You'll start seeing a little more of this as we go along. The inertia of productivity is, we end up with denial policies. We end up, or draconian policies. And I point out, this is why companies like RIM BlackBerry still have hope. The idea, oh, it's a corporate asset. Don't use your laptop, use mine. Don't use your phone, use mine. And you can't use your device. You have to use the Citrix or VMware, Citrix slice or VMware to be able to access the network. You're still going to see a lot of that in tight environments. There are going to be people who want to put clients. They're going to say, we want you to do virtual private networking. They want you to do proxy-based clients. We want to do mobility device management and put something on so we can control what's on your device. Again, these are resistive in the marketplace because people don't want to be controlled in those. Some of them, like VPN clients, tend to be, well, okay, I got to use a VPN client. But others, like mobility device management, tend to be, like I said, there's a deal of resistance. Then we have to consider, well, if we can't control the device, we have to control the communications to the device, right? That's where the network-based, network segmentation, where we say these are the trusted devices, these are the guest devices, and the like, especially by wireless SSID. Various mechanisms of access control. From everything from just password challenge to two-factor to to full certificates and such. Application detection and control, being able to classify the traffic. Fingerprinting and reputation, being able to fingerprint devices and track what devices have been doing. Reputation is going to be a big theme moving forward, and we'll talk more about that. And then unified threat management, the idea of looking for vulnerabilities in the data is going to be important. We can't control the device. So we will end up initially trying to deal with the communications coming to and from that device. It ties into wireless and mobility. Virtually all new clients will be wireless. So we have the security antennas. Wireless AP solutions tied directly to network security is going to be a big play. You're going to see a very strong convergence. On carrier sides, being able to deal on the back end, be able to look past various encapsulations, securing LTE and small cell deployments. Small cell deployments are actually much more popular in Europe, where, quite honestly, infrastructure doesn't allow for cell towers and such to be put up. So we start looking at metro cells and even femto cells in residential areas to take up the slack. We have to provide intelligent VPN capabilities to mobile users to be able to secure their data. And we have to deal with the explosion of growth of mobile devices. So IPv6 is going to come into play here as we move forward. As we deal with malicious insiders, organizations provide users just too much access to sensitive data and applications. And I can choose many examples in the past, but the obvious one that's in the news or recently in the news was the WikiLeaks issue. Still ongoing. One little Army specialist, copied a disk full of stuff because he had full access, to the CIPRNet connection that was provided to him. Even if the user's innocent, user access can be compromised, key logging, botnets, carelessness. I talk particularly about the innocent users, and quite honestly, I can have a separate discussion at some point about the uselessness of many password strategies today, simply because of key logging and password entropy and a few things. Network security is generally IP focused. In the past, we've said this is the network, these are the hosts on the network based on IP address subnet mask, and we saying, well, they need to go to this space. And that's really how firewalls in the past have dealt with it, and to some extent dealt with it. But now we have to be user focused. We have to ask questions, and how do we qualify those questions into policy? Who is the user? What groups do they belong to? That's where we start tying into LDAP and other types of directory schemas. How well do I know the user? Is the user simply providing an identity? Are they doing a challenge, a two-factor? Are they providing certificates? How well do I know the user is who they're using? What device are they going to be using? It differs. Myself on, let's say, my laptop should have different rights than myself on my phone. That could be of a concern. Where are they? How are they accessing the network? What applications are they using and what are they trying to access? These are all policy questions that, quite honestly, are emerging capabilities in network-based security. A little fun slide on this, the many faces of the user. For example, I'm sitting here in the Forta lab, and of course, I'm going to, this is me at the office. If I need to access engineering systems and source code, theoretically, I should be able to do so. But it's a big difference if I'm on the road. This is me with a Latin American team, sales team, and it's like, well, should I have access? What degree should my access be curtailed while I'm on the road? Then, what if I'm out in a public place? This is me. It's funny. It's not just me cycling in Hawaii, but literally 5 minutes after this, I had to pull into the Haleiwa Cafe and do an hour-long WebEx. Prompt to on the fly. So what degree of access should I have while I'm out in public spaces? And then just for a little bit of fun, what kind of degree of access if I'm finishing my presentation in my hotel room at 3 in the morning? This person is not to be trusted with secrets per se. So the thing is, we have to deal with malicious, dealing with malicious insiders. Identity-based and dynamic policies, shift from IP to user-based control. Differential policies based on differential parameters. Single sign-on is going to become a big important aspect of it. Future SAML, IFMAP, XML-based mechanisms to be able to tie much more tighter into single sign-on and role. And again, the tie into authentication systems is inherent here. The other aspect of it, and I talk a little more about this, is client reputation. Being able to track user activity, be able to say, what is this person's role and what do I actually see? If I have a given user and I start seeing unusual, let's say he hits a number of deny rules on a firewall policy. If he starts showing up in the attack logs, if he starts sending traffic to Kyrgyzstan, which is against our, let's say, a corporate security policy or something like that. After a little while, the reputation of that user becomes into question. And this is, quite honestly, an area of emerging science and an opportunity, because we are trying to, we're kind of wading out into the pool trying to say, we need to understand user reputation, what is normal for users and what's unusual for users, and tie our expectations and roles to what we see to dynamic policies. And that's going to be a big move moving forward. Botnets, denial of service. Yes, they're on networks. We have traffic-based detection techniques. We have everything from data leakage prevention, vulnerability scanning and the like. We do have external reputation, IP-based reputation. For example, my company's research team tracks, a set. It's actually, I think it's above 50,000 summarized sets of IP address or IP address spaces, which are just, you don't want to connect to them. Okay, they're just bad. So we're starting to look at external reputation. We're looking at internal reputation. DDoS attacks are becoming more frequent because they're more political or cybercrime driven. We are starting to see client MSSP clean pipe solutions being offered. It's very difficult to defend against DDoS attacks, if it's coming already along a limited pipe on you. So we're starting to see that's more of an association with a managed service provider. We're moving beyond pure statistical detection. We're actually starting to make use of a number of technologies in terms of being able to track traffic, be able to track traffic patterns, and be able to move beyond just pure statistics to be a little more proactive. Social networking, again, the inertia of productivity is here. People are very productive in social environments. This has been proven time and time again, from when we did AOL Instant Messenger to Skype to Facebook chat and so forth, LinkedIn and the like. There's always going to be a degree of productivity. Monitoring the user activity is becoming a large concern. We're seeing a lot of this because of the need to defend business reputation and limit liabilities. We recognize that these are alternate communication sources. We recognize that there are file transfer capabilities. So things like web filtering, application control, data leakage prevention play a significant role here. For example, the ability to say, okay, we're going to allow Facebook, but you don't get to hit the like button because seeing something is information. Pressing a like button makes a statement. That type of thing. Government-sponsored censorship, like I said, no moral judgments here, okay? Without moral judgment, businesses, ISPs are being required to enforce content control blocking due to legal regulatory issues. We have examples, some of them are failed in the past, SOPA, PIPA, CISPA, the ACTA in the EU. Many are for the protection of minors. This is particularly true in Australia. Protection of copyrights and intellectual property, and in many cases, the defense of moral and cultural norms, particularly if you go to China, the Middle East, a number of areas where the defense of cultural norms becomes important. Multinational businesses have to consider the very local laws and regulations, and businesses are becoming liable for failure to detect violations. So our ability to work to be able to deal with government-sponsored censorship is becoming, again, a business factor in how we deal with information assurance. IPv6 crossover, okay, factors in IPv6 growth is not just due to IPv4 address depletion. The reality is, if you really look at the IPv4 space, only 12% of the addresses are actually being used. Most of it is just stored out there. They're being hoarded. It's reasons why, not this university, but Stanford has more IP address space than the entire People's Republic of China. So this is things like that. Accelerating growth of mobility devices. Like I said, that is going to be an issue, and it's not so much that, okay, we're trying to find addresses for all these, but it just seems simpler to say, hey, if we can move them into an IPv6 world, you have a number of cable set-top box providers and a number of carriers now looking to fully go into IPv6. But accelerating the internet presence in developing countries, there are developing countries that are just simply bypassing. The same way that, when the Berlin Wall fell, East Germany moved directly into wireless communications without, pulling infrastructure. It was more of a leapfrog, and we're seeing this where the developing world is leapfrogging into IPv6. But most importantly, is the reason why we're going to see a crossover is because of growth and fragmentation of the internet routing table. The truth is, we, particularly in the U.S., we live in the Beverly Hills of IPv4. Okay, it's simply we're comfortable with it. We have everything we need with IPv4. But there is a growing issue there. I'll talk a little more about that. IPv6 network security is being ignored. It's kind of the same way. I'd say the analogy between not today, but before Mac OS X. What was a big driver of people going to Mac OS X? They don't get viruses. Simply because people didn't craft it. It wasn't a rich enough target. Now we start, there's this perception of invulnerability in moving to IPv6, which is a false perception. We're now starting to see a number of crafty people, botnets and also individuals and such, that are now making use of IPv6 tunneling to bypass IPv4. It's simply being able to use IPv6 tunneling to get around control mechanisms in place. And we start seeing that NAT64, DNS64 is going to drive development of IPv6 networks. NAT64 and DNS64 are required for pure IPv6 clients to interoperate with an IPv4 world. And those are going to be, these are going to be crossover elements. I talked about the routing table size. And on the top is the IPv4 routing table. And as you see, it is now approaching 450,000 entries. So every router, every device that's out there that needs to utilize the full internet routing table now has to go through 450,000 entries to make a decision. even with improvements in indexing and attempts by network operators to summarize and we're still seeing growth. Even though it's heavily managed, it's still growing at a rate. Market-driven address space fragmentation in the face of IPv4 address depletion is going to accelerate. And by comparison, IPv6 is very small. The address allocation of IPv6 was intelligently done to attempt to maximize table efficiency. So you see here, you're seeing a little over 10,000 routes, which is easily handled. As the IPv4 internet routing table continues to add more latency and thus a higher cost of productivity, you're going to start seeing the migration to IPv6 due to market factors. And like I said, I anticipate that this is going to be starting very much in earnest within 2 to 3 years' time. John Chambers, the CEO of Cisco, said in the near future, this was back in 2002, in the near future, each person shall carry a minimum of 5 IP addresses. One thing I will say about this is he was grossly underestimating. The reason being is it was based on an assumption that devices shall carry a single IP address and utilize TCP/UDP-based communications. That's the legacy. IPv6 is carrying certain legacies similar to the way that advanced PCs carried 8086 kernels, DOS kernels built into them. But we're going to see that as we really look into the crystal ball down the road, and we look at the fact that each BGP site, if you ask for an address allocation. Let's say you go to a tunnel broker like Hurricane Electric, say, I want an IPv6 address allocation and I want to be a BGP peer. They will give you a /48 because that's what the RFC says is the minimum allocation for a BGP site in IPv6 is a /48. This is an address space equivalent to the internet to the 48th power. And this is for you. I have internet to the 48th power address space in my basement. So what do we do? It's a ludicrous number of addresses. But the thing is, there starts to become interesting possibilities. When we get away from the single factor of just changing the address, what happens when we start dealing with the concept of applications with per IP addressing? When we start saying we don't need TCP/UDP anymore because we can do it better in the layer 3 space. When we say the concept of virtualized internets, the internet is just a /32. Imagine that, for example, we can have virtualized internet where we can have filtered views of the internet relative to ourselves. Prefix shifting, the ability for me to have an address that prefix shifts across other domains is another interesting thing. But how do we deal with this from a security standpoint? When everything we do in IP information assurance is based on the idea that a device has a single IP address. What happens when we break that model and start having to deal with IP addresses in the aggregate is going to be an interesting question. Critical infrastructure. Industrial security. There are always deployment of new industrial technologies, the need for improved infrastructure monitoring and centralized control and automation. These are all drivers that are moving SCADA out of pure closed or air-gap environments to the development of secure protocols. Industrial and proprietary protocols are being encapsulated in IP. This is very analogous to the onset of voice over IP. Voice was secure, when we were dealing with class 5, switches and the like. When we put it into IP, we now exposed voice to a raft of IP vulnerabilities, which, we're still sorting out. But the idea here is that we have to deal with, this emergence. IPsec, is going to be a key issue. Strict access control is required. One thing that we cannot have is let's say, someone in a chemical factory that realizes if I put a wireless router onto a secure system, I can monitor something while I'm taking a smoke break, off of my iPhone. This is, these are recipes for disaster. So strict access control is going to be required. We are looking at emerging middleware protocols in IP that are IP-based. Latency is a high concern. You can see this over and over again. Latency becomes an issue. Whenever people develop secure solutions, one of the biggest reasons that secure solutions are not adopted is because they add too much latency. This is particularly true in industrial environments. It's also true in high transaction environments, such as financial systems and such. If you develop something, it's great. If the latency is too high, it's just not accepted. It's not an acceptable thing. And we're seeing the ruggedization of networking equipment becoming more and more of a concern. So that's going to be an interesting market as well, where we have to have networking equipment that operates in minus 30-degree temperatures in Alaska or something like that, or in the Sahara without a fan, that type of thing. So I've been talking about this. I've been hinting about this idea, the inertia of productivity. What is the inertia of productivity? It is the challenge that it is the challenge of new technology solutions, applications that drive networks to greater levels of insecurity. The fact of the matter is, wherever the security of your network is today, it will go down tomorrow because someone's going to add something new. It's just a simple fact. We see this continuously. People set up minimal security relative to certifications and the like. People throw yet another application, and all of a sudden they end up being compromised simply because of some backdoor mechanism that wasn't dealt with. So we have to deal with this. It's an ongoing concern. It's the realization that the true goal of network security is to enhance and maintain productivity. It's not just the pure mitigation of risks and vulnerabilities. That the intention is to keep our networks up. We can't assume that we are going to achieve absolute security. In fact, a famous saying, he didn't mean it for information security, but a famous saying by Dwight D. Eisenhower was, "We will go bankrupt in the search for absolute security." So it's something where we have to deal with it as an ongoing process relative to productivity. We recognize that it is the users and client devices on a network that represent the majority of threat vectors. Up until now, it's been the boogeyman out in the corner, the guy who's trying to run hacks into the environment and such. That's not true. The truth of the matter is, it's our users ourselves who are bringing compromised systems into our networks, who are actually bypassing our security mechanisms and the like. Honestly, many times for the goal of achieving productivity. For doing a better job, they're willing to sacrifice or shortcut. You see it all the time. You have, for example, you can have a law firm that has controls on a printer because there's a legal issue associated with what's printed. But someone needs to get something fast, so it's easy to go down to Costco and buy a $60 printer and say, well, I can get around this issue. I was when I was with Cisco Systems, we were doing an experiment in 802.1x access control, putting these clients, these supplicants, onto a floor full of PCs at a financial services firm. We came back a week later and found that there was a wireless router connected to the printer line because the printer didn't have 802.1x access control, so people bypassed. So we have to recognize that it is the users and clients, not the external boogeyman so much, that really represent the true issue. The nature of address application IPv6 and IPv4 will result, as I mentioned, in a cascade of new security problems for which security solutions do not currently exist. Like I said, we talk about IPv6 as dual stack, ships in the night. It's just IPv4 with a bigger address. The reality is that's a single variable equation. How people begin to develop into the IPv6 space is quite honestly quite scary in terms of the ability, our ability to have to be able to inspect traffic into that space. And then one thing that's always been true, right now commercial security systems, firewalls, VPNs, IPS and the like, they generally run one or two orders of magnitude behind where infrastructure is. If infrastructure is now at 100 gig, right now security firms are struggling to reach 10. This is a problem, particularly as we start looking at data center aggregated environments, where people are saying, "I need to be able to aggregate, for to do a better productivity, better costs, better margins, but I have security systems that hobble my ability to do so." So as we develop, new security solutions, performance values count. And I will tell you that directly. We right now, for example, my company does massive amounts of testing on performance values. People don't have so much of a concern about the actual security mechanisms as much as they do the performance values associated with it. The challenge of the new comes into play, and I point this out, and it's strange to hear this from a security technologist. Security is not required for productivity. You don't need it. Okay, if you want to set up something new, a new application, let's say you go into an office, you want to set up a voice over IP system, you grab some phones, you sit back, grab a virtual PBX, you set it up, we make some phone calls between each other. It's great. It works. You didn't need security to achieve that. Okay, and this is a problem. It is a build it and they will come environment. As people develop applications, as people add things to the network, we do this for productive reasons. When you look at, for example, the onset of wireless networking, WEP was grossly inadequate, from a security protocol. Today, you can probably run around the neighborhoods and find dozens of open access points. This is, it's the nature of it. But we do this for productive reasons, not because we're being more secure. Regulation, compliance, liability tends to set the minimum security requirement, not risk mitigation. People, go do secure things because they're required to. Okay, this is this is a fact. Companies generally tend to be unaware of those risks, potential risks. Trusted insiders and groupthink void security by design. A lot of times, the decision makers are the ones that say, "Hey, we're all buddies, we're all pals, we're all here in business together, we see each other every day." And we don't realize that, it's that groupthink that sometimes avoids security by design. It becomes a concern. And these are examples, wireless industrial security, because industrial security is closed. The reason to have closed systems is simply so you can avoid the security issue. Mobility and bring your own device. These are all aspects where we're achieving productivity without regard to security. The next concern in the inertia of productivity is the $200 seatbelt. And that goes to the idea that when seatbelts were first offered in automobiles, it was offered as a $200 option. How many people bought the $200 option for seatbelts? None. Okay, you'll buy a radio, but you won't buy a seatbelt. It has to be mandated. But the issue really comes to this: security is perceived as a cost, whereas productivity is perceived as a value. So whenever one of the things that you see with chief information security officers, CISOs, and such, it's a losing argument. It's like there's a budget. And he says, "I need this to be more secure," but he doesn't make the case that he's being more productive. And this becomes a concern. Security efforts fail because they oppose business objectives. That's the principal reason why they fail. The first goal of network-based security is to be transparent. Okay, we do not want to be like checking in at the airport going through the TSA. If right now we're kind of all forced to. But the thing here is, it becomes very onerous, and people start looking for ways to bypass you. The better goal is to enhance productivity, is to actually become part of the productive model, that we can do more by sharing and access. This is where investments in, for example, directory-based systems, and being able to deal with the ability to provide organizational value through security all become where we enhance productivity. And people will pay more for a clean pipe. It's something that this is very true. It works very well in the MSSP space, managed service provider space, where they say, here's a pipe, but this one I'm saying I'm providing cleanliness to, so it's an added value to you. So where we can enhance productivity is a value. We want to seek to reduce operational costs. This is where outsource security, service level agreements, elimination of per seat costs, and single pane of glass all come into play. The user device client view of the network. Okay, on the right is the network, and on the left is the perceived value of the user device. The reality is, this is the way users view it. It's either, if I can do it, then I'm okay with it. The minute that this goes wrong, we keep learning this over and over again, like in voice over IP. The minute I don't have a dial tone, it's a problem. The same thing holds true here. If I can't have it instantly available, then I have a problem. And this is the perception. The thing is, productivity is a quality associated with endpoints. We can't lose sight of that. That's where productivity happens. It happens on the user interface. The ability to access data, the ability to be productive is right there in the palm of your hand, which, like I said, the problem is we no longer control it or even own it. So that becomes an emerging issue. This is why BYOD, bring your own device, is such a buzzword in the industry today. The key is to identify devices, users, applications, and secure the communications. The other challenge, though, and it's still an emerging challenge, is how to secure data stored at endpoints. There is a footprint for business data, and it ends up, in many cases, being residual. And we have to ask ourselves, how do we secure data? Do we provide, for example, encrypted stores with dissolving keys? Do we, there are a number of neat ideas that are out there, but it becomes a large issue. Client reputation, the ability to qualitatively and quantitatively determine if the client is normal on the network relative to their role. We can do a number of scoring vectors. We can say, well, how many times do they have an attack log? How many times do they match a deny rule? Do they have unusual application activity, skewed traffic patterns, or inappropriate web usage? Currently event and statistically driven. Quite honestly, I say that client reputation today, quite honestly, it's analogous to feng shui. We kind of know that something works or something doesn't, but we don't exactly know the science behind it. Nor have we really gone far enough to tie it to expected roles, expected behavior, as well as being able to tie it towards productive goals. So these are future reputation should be tied to roles-based expectations. The cardinal rule for network-based security is that a security solution cannot become a networking problem. This is where I was talking about and admonishing about the delta, the orders of magnitude difference between security solutions and the infrastructures that they rely on. Security risk is theoretical, but a slow network is real. Okay, I will tell you, you can stand up all you want in front of a CIO and a CEO and say, but we're safer. If it's slow and it's a problem, it will rapidly become your problem. Bolt-on security tends to induce performance bottlenecks. It's the nature of it because we're doing it as an afterthought. It's also the capabilities that the market offers today, which becomes an issue. The goal is to achieve effective wire speed security. So even though we're thinking about security, we have to think about performance. We have to think about packet rate, session capacitance. The thing here is the number one bottleneck once you go above layer 4. The number one bottleneck is usually the size of your session table, and the ability to read and write entries into it becomes a significant limiter in terms of being able to look at layer 4 and beyond. Throughput, of course, and latency. I don't know how many times, particularly in the financial space, we talk about security, a certain security solution or security approach. The very next question is, can it be done in 10 microseconds or less per node? Because that's, if not, then it becomes an issue. Security is always the prime suspect during an outage. Okay, if you're looking at a career going into information assurance, particularly in the commercial spaces, be prepared to be yelled at because you're the number one suspect. It's just the nature of it. And we forget oftentimes that no security at all is the default position. Like I said, people are looking for the value of productivity, not the cost of security. We can talk until we're blue in the face about how much more secure we are by implementing X. And the reality is, but it's not enhancing my value, therefore I'm not interested, unless somebody forces me to do it through compliance or regulation. There are divergence in deployment models. There are few viable end-to-end solutions in the marketplace. Like I said, there are a lot of people who talk about clients. There are a lot of people who talk about the ability to do security end-to-end. The reality is, once you go into a BYOD space, we look at the reality of that, it no longer exists, particularly on the user side. We need to be able to look at securing the access layer. Wide tolerance for performance allows for the ability to do this on the access layer, classification and inspection. Because unlike in the aggregate, towards the core, in the data center and such, we're not concerned about aggregate support. We're concerned about intermittent usage. It was funny, I had someone who was calculating once. It used to be a very long time ago, one of our platforms was doing web-based inspection, and it had the ability to maintain 15,000 concurrent connections in its proxy. And the customer was like, what, are you kidding me? 15,000 connections? What is that? I can blow through that easily. And I said, well, that's true, but the reality of the situation is this. If you take the average user and you determine the average number of web pages that user does and the frequency of it and such, you come up with a calculation that says that a given average user is good for 1/3 of a web session at any given time. So if you have 15,000 in your inventory, you're good up to 45,000 users, theoretically, on the high end. So it just depends on your point of view. So the point being is that we can be more tolerant closer to the edge, because we don't have to, but as we move towards the aggregate, performance becomes a higher and higher concern. There is a direct linkage between wireless and network-based security systems. Okay, quite honestly, this is something that I know my company is doing investments in, a large number of other companies are doing investments in, is dealing with the antenna issue, because it is the point, it is the new boundary, per se, that we have to deal with. I talk about a little bit about locator ID separation protocol. This is actually something that I'm very interested in. It's an IETF draft. Locator ID separation protocol provides the ability to add a secondary IP header. So what happens is, if you have an endpoint and that endpoint sends out a packet with the source and destination address in it, what happens is a Lisp-enabled router is capable of adding a secondary header and therefore controlling the routing of that packet in a differential fashion than what the endpoint intended. This allows us to be able to steer packets of data, let's say, to different types of inspection mechanisms, things which can help us from a clustering standpoint deal with the performance issue. So I'm very interested in the idea of support of Lisp. Aggregation in the data center, static and dynamic policy enforcement, and effective wire speed. It has to be effective wire speed. Otherwise, it's useless. Now, one way that we can counter this, or counter the cost of it, is the convergence of layer 2, layer 3 roles. It's a hard discussion to have sometimes. I talk about it with customers. They say, well, you're going to add a certain amount of latency or certain performance characteristics associated with it. I don't know if I can afford it. And then I say, yeah, you can. Just take out that Cisco or Juniper router and let me do the routing while I'm at it. That type of thing. We can add, kind of do the rob Peter to pay Paul type thing. The thing here is there is going to be emergence of, the same way that we had switches, separate switches and routers migrating to multi-layer switches, wire-speed multi-layer switches. We've had separate firewalls. Now we have wire-speed firewalls. We're going to start seeing the emergence of security nodes which occupy the OSI space, going all the way, being able to perform layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, and even layer 7 capabilities. So the truth is, wire speed layer 2, layer 3 is now highly commoditized. and is feature rich. So there's actually the barriers to entry into that space have gone down. Something that, quite honestly, traditional routing and switching companies don't necessarily want people to know. Single pane of glass management, provisioning, reporting. This is, I can't overemphasize the importance here because the thing here is the cost of security solutions, the capital costs, are far smaller than the operational costs. It makes no sense if you have a security solution. Let's say you can sell that security solution for $500,000. That's a one-time charge, maybe with some maintenance on a year-to-year basis. But if you require a team of $150,000 a year specialists, in terms of salary and benefits and such, to be able to maintain that, that's where the real cost is. And the thing is, wherever we can, the single pane of glass management, provisioning, and reporting become significant issues in the deployment model. So I kind of talked a little bit. I see the countdown timer is coming up on 10 seconds. I want to put a closing thought. This is interesting from a security officer at Dow Chemical. The best way to get management excited about a disaster plan is to burn down the building across the street. So what does that mean from the emergence, the inertia of productivity? The truth of the matter is, security solutions are often developed. It's either a calm or a panic mode, and security solutions are developed when productivity goes bad. It's the nature of the event horizon that we deal with, and it is going to be a large aspect of your careers as you start looking, not just in information assurance, but just in general in terms of telecommunications, computer science, and the like. This is, like I said, it's a high-level talk. I didn't mean to go deep into the weeds into any particular aspect. I'd be willing to answer any questions you may have at this time. Any thoughts? Yes.
How much does policy
Don't forget to push the button.
Yeah.
Okay.
How much does policy play a role in industry? I mean, to prevent all these issues.
How much does policy play a role in industry? I can give you the politically correct answer or the real answer. Okay, the politically correct answer is we have systems, various ISO audits, the 9001 series and 9002 series and the like. We have, for example, of course, the credit card industry, PCI compliance issues, HIPAA, Graham-Leach-Bliley, things like that, which tend to play a role in this. However, as I point out, most of these are dealing with the baseline of known issues, not about the emergence of unknown issues. The fact that you have an IPS system in place, because PCI requirement says to, does not mean you're not going to get hacked. It just means that you have now employed a mechanical paid witness to tell you why. The thing here is, as I pointed out in the opening slide, if you really think that technology is the answer to security, you're mistaken. It is about process. Unfortunately, we can talk about policy, but policy requires enforcement. And I'm afraid in too many cases, policy is printed in a manual, and that manual is collecting dust. That's the reality situation. Yes?
Can I build off of that question?
Sure.
Do you think we should educate, the younger generation somehow, like in the elementary schools or the junior high schools, and because these are going to be the future business people, or the future congressmen that makes these policies. Should we get more involved of educating them on security, computer security, and the security in general?
That's an interesting touch point, because that's something that I very much talk about. We are coming up. Everyone has heard the old euphemism, Al Gore invented the internet, and 200 years will probably be in a textbook. The reality is that during the time of the early Clinton administration, that was where the commercialization of the internet occurred, when NSFNet was finally shut down and moved fully to commercial providers. During the nearly 20 years since that has occurred, primary school curriculum has not changed relative to information systems. We simply don't deal with it. In fact, this year it just came out that the web index provided by Tim Berners-Lee, and his group, the U.S. is not number one. Okay, we're now number 2 in the aggregate. Sweden is the number 1 place for information, in terms of information knowledge and awareness today. So we have slid down the pole. I think that we are, if I was going to ask, because you have to mandate these things from an administrative level. If I was to ask the administration or the DOE, Department of Education, not Department of Energy, Department of Education, to really look at things, it would be a revamping of primary school curriculums to deal with, information systems. It's just a travesty that we have not, effectively adapted, to the governance. The thing is, our industrial competitors have. Okay, if you look at a primary school in India, you go to a primary school in China, they may not have running water, but the kids are learning about information systems. It's just the nature of it. We have it is, like I said, it's a touchy point for me. I definitely have certain views about it. I think it's a mistake what we do with our primary school. I would like to see changes made, but yes, I tend to agree with that. Other questions? Okay, well, I thank you very much for your time. I hope this is some useful insights. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but I certainly, my email address is there. Certainly would invite any discourse along the way. Thank you very much.